Good evening. This is Jenny Fisher. This is 2020 Vision, and welcome to our show. Um, I'm sorry, I'm in a complete daze. Everyone who knows me knows that I'm habitually late. I literally walked in 2 minutes ago, so I'm still trying to set up. But hopefully you can hear me, and hopefully you're looking forward, as I am, to an evening or an hour or so of discussion about green Tower Hamlets, or is it brown and yucky Tower Hamlets? Let's find out. Welcome to our guest tonight, Mr. Ken Greenway, who is associated with Tower Hamlets Cemetery Park. Hi, Ken. How are you doing?
I'm very well, Jenny, and you?
Touch and go, touch and go.
Touching, excellent. Well, thanks for having me this evening. It's a pleasure to be here.
Oh, well, let's see what we can do about that then. Okay, right. Okay, the first question I had for you, Ken, we're just going to go straight into it. What we're going to talk about is the difference or the contrast in Tower Hamlets, at least, and it's pertinent to other parts of East London, between some of the wonderful green spaces that we have, while at the same time we host a massive amount of through traffic. And it's also going to get worse, I think, with people trying to get back to work a bit but avoiding public transport. So let's kick off. Ring in if you would like to join in the chat, if you've got something to say about parking in Tower Hamlets or driving a car in Tower Hamlets or in wider East London. If your borough that isn't Tower Hamlets but it's got a good policy, that's right, 0208 12345 07. So give us a call. If you think we're talking rubbish, ring in and we'll have a healthy debate. But let's get started before all that happens. So Ken, we've not actually met before. I assume, Ken, that you just sort of looked at your surname and thought, environmentalism, that's the career for me. What drew you into this sort of work?
Oh, goodness. Well, I guess like most children, I was the last generation of kids that were kind of kicked outside and told to come home for dinner when the street lights went out. I was growing up in the 80s and the 90s. And like most kids, when you're outside, I grew up in Romford, you see things, wildlife, you're outside looking, you're spending time with your friends. So I saw all those things growing up, and it captured my attention, but it wasn't an interest that went with age and my interest in the outdoors. And thankfully, through primary school and secondary school, I had teachers who noticed that interest in the outdoors and kind of encouraged it at all various points. So you can imagine how popular a teenager is at secondary school with an interest in nature. But I was persistent and determined, and thankfully neither of my parents wanted my brother or I to take over the family business. They ran a lift engineering company.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, my dad did a lot of contracts in Tower Hamlets for the council, so he found it quite interesting that I came here. Yeah, I came here to work.
I wouldn't shout about that if I were you.
No, that's fine.
Keep that quiet.
My parents kind of were very they recognised that my brother and I had opportunities that they never had growing up and wanted us to kind of both follow our hearts. So I pursued a career in nature conservation. I volunteered from a young age and developed a wildlife gardens at secondary school. Even got to go to Queen Elizabeth Hall at the South Bank and collect an award for the garden. And then went to university and continued to volunteer. And then when I graduated, I got a job as a countryside officer down in Kent, and for the Kent High Weald project, and I was there for 2 years. And then I saw the job come up for Tower Hamlets Cemetery Park in 2002. I applied, got the job, and haven't looked back. I've been at the cemetery park for 18 years. I love the borough. I love the cemetery park. The borough and the cemetery park are very dynamic places and continually changing, and I like that vibrancy about the borough. And I also like the way the third sector has a really big role in kind of supporting people in Tower Hamlets, and being part of that as working for a registered charity managing a council-owned park. It's very rewarding. So I've got to turn a childhood interest into a career, and I get to play outside every day, except I'm not knocking for my friends. Can Johnny come out to play or whatever it is? It's lovely. I think it was Confucius who said, if you can find a job you love, you never work a day in your life. And there are days where it's like, oh goodness, there's a lot going on, and it's felt like that during lockdown. But day to day, it's a great job.
Was that really Confucius? I thought it was Ken Livingstone, but
I don't know. He could have got it
yeah,
from Confucius. I don't know. It's these things.
same difference.
Yeah, exactly. But no,
Yes,
it's a great place.
I had an allergy to nature throughout my early years until I was over 40, I think.
Right.
But then all of a sudden, genetics won through, and
Oh, good.
it's a secret guilty pleasure or passion
Oh,
that I do
it's well,
indulge in. But
it's very important. It's in a city setting,
mm,
having access to green
mm,
spaces and being able to enjoy wildlife is immensely rewarding and beneficial to people's physical and mental well-being. And there's been a lot of research around that. The benefit of parks and green spaces to people living in the cities and towns. And so we're part of that service that benefits the residents of Tower Hamlets, and especially the borough
yes,
that's growing as much as it is.
I know you have held sessions, opportunities for people who are suffering with bad mental health, and so you do try to address that. I think I was actually obviously I wasn't around when the cemetery park was set up, but I think I was actually around when it had its modern oomph, its sort of revitalisation. So I remember being taken there for some sort of meeting, and there was great talk of building some sort of, I think it was building or reusing, but I think it was building some sort of centre and calling it the Soanes Centre.
That's right. Yes.
I thought it was a terrible idea, but
no, it got
maybe
built,
I was
and
wrong.
no, it got. I mean, we'd
was
be
that 20 years ago.
Yeah, it was built in 1990, so a bit longer.
Oh, right.
So 93 actually.
Okay. Right. In that case, it wasn't while it was being built. Yeah.
Yeah. No. So it was the Soanes Centre. Your memory was really good, and I think without it, we wouldn't be able to offer what we do offer. I mean, it was built pretty much on the footprint of the original lodge that got damaged during the Second World War. That was there, you may well have known Stuart Raymond, who was a Lib Dem councillor at the time, and he was integral in ensuring it got built. And there are two charities based within the cemetery park now. There's us, the Friends, who manage and deliver the events, and then there's an educational charity in normal times welcoming 7,000 school children a year using the cemetery park as a resource to learn about wildlife. So mini bee safaris, pond dipping, all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. Okay. So let's backtrack a second. Why a cemetery? I mean, surely cemeteries should be fenced off and left alone. I mean, I do occasionally go to cemeteries where I've sort of planted people who were obviously, post demise with their consent, and they are very manicured, somewhat grubby, somewhat. I think that might just be Essex for you, and there's very little wildlife going on there. Guess. So what's different about the cemetery park?
So one of the key things that I guess makes us stand out from amongst regular cemeteries is that in 1966, an Act of Parliament formally closed us as a cemetery, redeclaring us as a public park. So that it doesn't mean that we're disrespectful or inconsiderate of the dead people that are there, but it allowed a new way of thinking about how to secure and manage that heritage. Because once we were a park, it was post-war 1960s Britain. Attitude of the time was knock it down, start again. And a lot of that work was carried out by the GLC when they existed. And they removed the original chapels, collapsed the catacombs, began removing the gravestones.
Ooh.
And, that was quite hurtful to a lot of people, caused a massive outcry, big protests outside the old City Hall, which I believe is a Marriott's Hotel by the London Eye now. That was very successful. So rather than lose all 27 acres of our heritage, we only actually lost about 0.7 acres. But a future needed to be thought about to secure that and make it relevant to everybody, because East London is a changing community. People come and go rapidly. And so the people that buried there don't necessarily live in the area anymore, didn't know this stuff was going on, these clearances. So, one of the very early arguments that were latched onto very quickly when looking back at the press was, it as a wildlife haven. And it was on the backdrop of kind of city farms being really popular at the time as a way to secure land with all the Docklands development. So it pulled on a lot of heartstrings. It made a lot of sense to people. And during its life as a cemetery, a woodland had grown up amongst the gravestones. It wasn't a recent thing. There was a woman writing at the turn of the 20th century who was visiting the Magnificent Seven that we're part of, and she wrote about how parts of Tower Hamlets Cemetery was inaccessible due to rampant plant growth and tall trees. So, we had these big trees, we had this woodland setting, and so why not be a place for remembrance and wildlife and people? Let's make the best of it. Let's not make a green desert with lollipop trees. There's enough of those parks in the city. Let's provide something unmatched and unrivaled, unique and unusual in a borough like Tower Hamlets, which I think is immensely unusual, which is one of its charms. So, and it worked really well. And so the Friends kind of were born out of the GLC being abolished in 85 by Margaret Thatcher. And then it came to Tower Hamlets Council. They kind of were a bit of a loss of how best to take it forward, but supported the creation of the Friends, and they've been a key stakeholder and supporter of the Friends ever since. And then, so we always kind of supported the management of the site. Tower Hamlets did it up until 2004, when we actually were awarded the maintenance and litter contract for the site, and we've just gone great guns since then. We welcome in normal times, about 3,000 volunteers to help manage the place for wildlife and people. And it's become...
I was wondering for a while if you were caught up in the neighbourhood battle, because that, of course, was a time that younger viewers may not remember in Tower Hamlets, but it was when the borough was divided, and if a facility was in your patch, there were 7 different neighbourhoods, then you had to look after it, and it led to many anomalies of borough-wide resources being looked after by sort of 3 councillors and a chief exec.
I
you
guess,
probably escaped that.
Yeah, we kind of escaped that, and I guess that's when the Sound Centre was built as well. It kind of worked in our favour a bit. There was a lot of kind of development money sloshing around, London-wide stuff, and the cemetery park was being managed a bit piecemeal, and it wasn't really until, I'm not saying things didn't happen before then, but 2004, when we got the contract from the council, we were able to prove that the council had trust in us, which allowed us to access bigger pots of grant funding. And we were quite lucky getting a large pot of money from the Viola Environmental Trust in the latter part of 05. And that really just accelerated our work programme, and we haven't really looked back since. We're now three full-time staff, about to employ a 4th. And things are good for the Friends. I mean, not finances, we're kind of always chasing the pound, but we're in a good position compared to some charities.
Oh, well, that's good to hear, because I know we had some contact at the start of lockdown with Stepney City Farm, and I know they were having a dreadful time. I don't know if they got out of it, because they couldn't let visitors in to begin with, but then they couldn't furlough their staff because they had to go in and feed the animals.
Yes, that's
and
right.
There didn't seem to be any category for them.
Exactly, really tough for that situation. I mean, we entered the lockdown in a strong financial position because, thankfully it kind of started at the end of a financial year for us. So we went into it understanding the hill we needed to climb. We started a crowdfunding campaign asking people to help us raise £5,000, and we got over £27,000. And then with the 3 staff hammered away on grants, along with our chair of trustees, we've been pretty good getting some emergency survival grants in that have all been around for charities, and that's helped us out a great deal. We've still got a hill to climb before March next year, but and we need to come up with a plan of how to make us more resilient going forward from April next year, so we can't be so dependent on grant funding, because that isn't going to be there forever, those survival grants. But we're okay, and we're doing all right.
Yeah, if you raise that much money from a crowdfunding appeal, there must be a lot of people who hold the cemetery park quite dear. So what is it? Is it people who do have loved ones still buried there and who want to see the area kept well, or is it sort of the larger group of people probably who see it as an environmental or ecological resource, an odd thing to stumble on in the middle of Tower Hamlets.
It certainly is. And I think, yes, I'm sure some people who've got relatives buried there supported. But when we look back at the comments from those that did support us, they were from the people who were using us during the lockdown. The people that said to us, everyone, it kept them sane, allowing them to have that sense of escapism to somewhere that felt like the countryside, getting away from the noise of the city and the stress of a lockdown in a city. I think people were so generous because of what the cemetery park did to them mentally and physically. And people were only too keen to ensure its survival and felt that we were the best custodians for it and wanted to support our position in the cemetery park. So we were so humbled. I couldn't really believe it that we did so well.
Well, it's a funny old place, Tower Hamlets. I used to be allergic to walking anywhere as well, but then I discovered if you did it, you could save your £1.50 bus fare.
Yeah.
So I became a convert and began grudgingly walking short distances. But I was, what's the word? What was I during lockdown? Shielding, that's the word.
Yes.
So, but I was encouraged by, I'm also allergic to the NHS, but I have these GPs who nag me all the time. Anyway,
they care about you, Jenny. That's why.
Yeah, I know, it's very inconvenient. But they did suggest that I escape from the flat every now and then. I live on the Isle of Dogs and exercise. They said, and
good.
Anyway, ended up I walked all sorts of places around the Isle of Dogs I've never walked before, and it scrubs up quite well. It's actually quite nice.
Yeah.
What I like about it is the water.
Yeah.
There's water everywhere.
There is. It's lovely.
Yeah.
And I think lots of people discovered that about the lockdown is, especially for our situation, Tower Hamlets has a large community that live in the borough but don't live in the borough. That's not where their friends, family and social stuff is. It's just a place they sleep. And then they were forced to stay in their homes and forced to explore where they lived. And we were discovered. We met so many people that I've lived in the borough for 10 years and I live on Brokesy Street or whatever it is, or Fairfoot Road.
Yeah.
I didn't know you were there, because that's not where their lives were. Their lives were elsewhere outside the borough. It wasn't a place they invested time day to day. And so we found so many new visitors that way, through people being forced to spend time where they lived because they couldn't go anywhere. They weren't allowed to.
Yeah. Yeah, I was quite excited to find birds all over the place. I'm not very keen on birds because I think of birds being the pigeons who've come to live on my balcony and stopped me being able to access my balcony. Yeah. And I think of the row I'm going to have with my landlord when I suggest it's their responsibility to remove the pigeon detritus that's the pigeons left. And they come up with, no, that's the tenant's responsibility to look after your balcony. And anyway, I expect that will happen. So I was not very keen on birds. And then I got quite excited about them as I walked around and saw them around the Isle of Dogs. And I was going to write about them in East London News. But then, I would have done, but unfortunately my lack of knowledge kicks in there.
But even your just response to the birds and what you made you think and feel. Yeah.
I can't do here is a bird. I can do look at these ducks or look at these geese. And when it occurred to me, I didn't know if they were ducks or geese.
Yeah.
But I thought.
But you're kind of. I think the lockdown encouraged everyone to slow down a little bit, and they looked a bit deeper at the places they lived, and they had a response to that, and they saw where they lived in a new way that they hadn't experienced before, and and obviously you've just echoed that, being able to just slow down and look at the birds, and you had a response to them. Might not know what you were looking at, but you had a reaction to them, which is really good, and that's a positive thing.
Yeah. Okay, so it's not embarrassing not to be able to tell a duck from a goose.
You don't need to know what things are to enjoy them. It doesn't change your enjoyment of them by not knowing their name. I
can do swans. That was quite good. Anyway, so right, I'll try to get back to that when I get back to East London News. So let's press on. If dear listener, our viewers very seldom ring in because I think they're all very shy. But if any of you out there are not shy, if you've actually been out walking during the lockdown and seen a bit of wildlife, phone in and let us know what you've seen. It's 0208 12345 07. So give us a ring and tell us about it. So just the last bit, going through the cemetery park, and then I want to get onto the environment, so sort of wider environmental questions. Paint me a word picture then. If I went to the cemetery park, what would I see? I'm quite partial to trees, I'll give you that. But for what else would I encounter plant-wise and animal-wise?
Yeah, so I mean, I guess, if you're coming through the Southern Grove entrance, you're greeted initially by a meadow and the monuments amongst it. So you're going to see wildflowers and grasses that you may not see commonly elsewhere in the borough. As you kind of continue your way through, you're going to swap tower blocks for trees. And, trees 170 years old and older, towering above you as you walk along the path. So birds are a bit quiet at the moment because a lot of them are molting, but when they're not molting, you're going to hear bird song. You swap traffic noise for bird song. And again, we're coming to the end of summer, so things are quietening down. Plants are going to seed. Insect diversity is lessening, but we've recorded 31 of Britain's 59 species of butterfly in the cemetery park. So on a good day in May or June, if you know what you're looking for, you could see 14 different species of butterfly in the cemetery park, over 100 species of bird. We've got UK rare bumblebees, flies, spiders and beetles. So we've been recording our bees, and bees are not just honeybees. There's the bumblebees, the honeybees, and there's the solitary bees. Over 50 species. Some of those are nationally notable and quite rare. So you're not just going to be greeted by green and colourful flowers and the diversity. You're going to be able to enjoy the seasons. General city living, if you don't visit parks, you're just going to experience a lengthening and shortening of the day. But when you visit a park, you can track the seasons. The trees come into leaf, they change their colour for autumn, they lose their leaves, they look bare. So it's a really kind of special, unrivaled place in the borough. There are some really good parks in Tower Hamlets, and many of them are well managed, but we do offer something that the others don't, not just a window into East London history and the stories of the people buried there, but an unrivaled connection to the natural world that is uncommon in such an urban context. We've been well written about because of that, and appeared on a number of BBC wildlife documentaries because of it.
Oh, I know you're above my pay grade, but
no, I don't get paid for it. It's just people recognise how special it is in Zone 2. Behind Mile End Tube Station, this sense of the countryside in the city. It really is quite special.
Yeah. So, but how much human effort goes into managing it to make it like that? Because sometimes, if you want to have a nature reserve, the best thing to do is just leave it alone and see what happens.
So nature always wants to go somewhere you might not like her to go. So for us to manage an accessible, friendly, welcoming, attractive space requires a great deal of input to create the nature reserve that you see. So in normal times, as I said earlier, I think we welcome 3,000 volunteers a year, about 100 a week. So these volunteers are undertaking handwork, following our guidance, having a crash course in botanical ID, weeding, planting, seeding, to control the dominance of certain plant species, to begin to install and help create that diversity. And then in the summer months, you're weeding those habitats. You're trying to prevent other plants taking over to remove the delicate stuff that's there, the delicate flowers and grasses and bulbs. So a great deal of effort goes into that. And then there's an annual mow, and those, when we mow that, all those arisings need to be taken away. We can't leave those grass cuttings down on the ground because they add fertility, and that then reduces the diversity of the wildflower meadows. So it's because we've got the gravestones, we can't employ machinery because machinery is indiscriminate and likely to damage gravestones. So all of our work has to be carried out by hand with people and hand tools. But that allows us to be more discriminatory and more sympathetic to how the cemetery park's thriving.
How do you hand mow a meadow?
Well, we in some areas we can use a regular mower. In areas we can't, we use a strimmer, a petrol strimmer. And if we can't get into it, it doesn't get cut, and we can just do things by hand with shears or something like that. But generally, machinery is indiscriminate, and we don't want that as a method for management. We need people going in and pulling nettles, cutting bramble, pulling cow parsley, dealing with bindweed. All plants lovely in their own right, but we don't need as much of it.
What kind of bindweed do you have? Regular
So we've got
bindweed or
with the white
bindweed?
trumpet, the white trumpet flower one, the one that you would make parachutes from as a kid, if you ever did that. But I don't know, maybe not, because your aversion to nature you mentioned earlier.
Yeah, I was actually born at the age of 37, I think. So no, nothing like that. But if you have all these trimmings, all these offcuts, and I do appreciate you can't leave them on the meadow. Are you not into composting? Do you compost?
We do compost on site.
Fantastic.
Yep. So we gather all the green waste on site, and then once a year we get a big machine that comes in and shreds it all. They give you an idea of the scale of this machine. Does about 80 tons an hour, and we have it for the day. So we have it from like 8 till 2, and it shreds all of our green waste we've generated from the year. We then rot that down over 2 years, turn it when we've got a digger on site doing path work or whatever it might be, and then we give it away for free. And it's built the roof garden on the South Bank, our compost. It pretty much was all taken up there. It's gone to secondary schools and primary schools in the borough. During the lockdown, everyone was growing food, so people were coming to collect our compost. And next week, we've got 10 lorry loads of it going to I think it's a secondary school in Newham, and to build their garden there. So, and we give it away free. Yeah, but we do it for free. Yeah, we're exporting it to the adjoining borough because we've got no need for compost. We always want low fertility in the cemetery park.
You do. I mean, this could be your. I'm going to take a bit of issue with you. I mean, this could be your fundraising bid for next year.
It could, We've never normally had this much interest in it, to be fair. I think the lockdown has generated a lot of interest in our compost. Normally, we've just got heaps of the stacks of stuff, but this year has been a bit different for everyone, I think, in lots of different ways.
Is it Bob Flowerdew who calls it brown gold?
Yeah, brown gold, black gold. Yeah, I've got a volunteer who calls it black gold. He goes, "Your compost is black gold," because he built this. Yeah, he loves it.
Sell it.
Yeah, and we will do.
And I'm very disturbed at the idea of you keeping it all somewhere for a year and then shredding it.
Yes, so it's mainly because of the expense of the machine. It costs us about £4,000 to get the machine in.
You don't need the machine. If you just put your green waste in your New Zealand compost bin, then a year later, when you could be ordering your machine, it'll be compost. If you layer it with with dry stuff. And what you could do is, this is what I used to do a long time ago. You could tout your services around the borough, and there are plenty of businesses that need a confidential waste disposal service.
Yes.
All you then need is some of your volunteers and a shredder, a simple paper shredding machine, a little tiny thing. You can get them for £10 from places like Aldi and Lidl and so forth from time to time. And you take the waste paper, you shred it, and then you put your green waste, you interleave it with paper. You'll have compost in a year. You won't have to hire an 80-ton an hour shredding machine. It's my contention.
No, I can hear what you're saying. I think the scale of our operation is a bit bigger than home composting. I mean, because we can have a machine that processes our green, but we've got trees in amongst that. So we've got quite large woody waste as well as all the soft stuff.
That's cheating.
Yeah.
Well, of course, sawdust is obviously a very highly controversial ingredient of compost heaps, isn't it? I've heard
I mean, ours are chips. I mean, they're chips of wood, so it's not breaking it down fine. It's kind of a crude. It's a shredder rather than a chipper, so it kind of just roughly breaks it up, and then that increases the surface area for kind of decomposition.
Well, we'll just have to have our little preferences.
Yes, that's fine. I'll show you the heap one day, just to help put a scale to it for you.
Send us a photograph. It's horrendous. Okay, I've quite lost word. So that was a word picture of what we might see.
Yes.
And the other question I wanted to ask you is, what kind of educational offering you have, not just for children, for grown-ups as well? Because I know I have written about the cemetery park. You do some relatively good press releases. And so I write about it regularly in East London News, and you seem to have sort of guided visits to the cemetery park. which are quite often general, but quite often very specific as well. So people can come and see the bats or the particular kind of flower, or whatever. So, and then of course there's educational activities too. So, what do you do to bring the people in?
Well, goodness, I guess the world's our oyster when it comes to that kind of stuff. So we've got the history through the stones. So we do a lot of heritage tours through the year. We do them both in-house, and we also partner with an organisation called the Cemetery Club, run by Sheldon, with his colleague Sasha, and they do kind of seasonal heritage tours for us around Halloween time and Christmas. And then we do all of our events. So we do kind of regular things. So there's the volunteering to come and help look after the site and record the graves. We do a free third Sunday of the month general guided walk. We have a wildlife club called Bow Beasties for families, where 11 times a year on a Saturday, they can come and take part in some kind of outdoor activity that engages families in enjoying the outdoors. So we've done pumpkin carving and mini beast safaris and casting animal footprints and worm charming, all that kind of stuff. And then we do kind of very bespoke guided walks. So there's stuff around the butterflies, then there's spring bulb walks, there's wildflower walks, tree walks, bat walks, moth mornings, grasshopper walks, spider forays, fungus forays, foraging tours. Foraging's really popular topic for us, with everyone kind of being aware of kind of carbon footprint and the miles their food takes to get to them. People are a bit more conscious about the origin of their food. So foraging is a very popular topic for us. We do a lot of those through the year. And and anything and everything really. We've done mosses, we've done lichens, and then we do lots of outreach work as well. So we've got a community cohesion project called Nature and Us, which takes us to Shandy Park, near the Sainsbury's by Queen Mary University, and Swedenborg Gardens off the highway. And we've been doing lots of work with schools and local people there to kind of plant bulbs, and we've done bat walks and foraging tours there as well, and tree tours and wildflower tours. And they're really popular. We've even done a wild tea event at Shandy Park and Swedenborg Gardens. So getting people to make teas with the plants they find around them in the parks. It's amazingly popular. Oh dear, I love it. So because people are just interested in the origin of their food and how they can take more ownership of where their food comes from.
I'm interested in the origin of food, and as far as I'm concerned, the origin of my tea is Asda's, and that's
fine. That's all right. So it's an extremely diverse program, I guess, of events, really. So because we recognise the cemetery park has no defence unless it's used and valued. So we do a lot of events for free. We do about 170 events a year, and over 100 of those a year are free of charge. Obviously, as a charity, we do need to generate revenue to ensure the staff can still work there, and it's okay to ask for money because we do good things with it. But we want to make sure that we're accessible to everyone. So we don't want people to feel that we're exclusive and you can only be part of us if you can pay for things. So we do a lot of free events to celebrate and share the cemetery park.
Oh, good. Yes, I was going to say actually, when you were talking about the cemetery, and it was going to be destroyed at one point, as an older cemetery where it had been uncemeteried by the House of Commons. Of course, a lot of Queen Mary is built on an old cemetery, a Jewish cemetery.
That's right. Yes,
and where I think it's relatively easy to build on after. If you get to 100 years after the last person was buried there, then it's relatively easy to go ahead. So I think the last bit. I used to work there a long time ago, and I mean, you get used to it, obviously, but you would walk from one building to another, literally through, past the cemetery.
Yes, that's right. Exactly. Yeah, and then you've also got the other Jewish cemetery on Bancroft Road as well, haven't you? That's fenced and that's there as well. So because obviously there's a large Jewish community in Tower Hamlets at one time, and they had their own cemetery. So we've got Jewish people in Tower Hamlets, but a lot of those were probably culturally Jewish rather than practicing Jewish people, because they're rubbing shoulders with everybody else.
Yes, I don't try to make a habit of mixing work with religion, but it just reminds me of when I used to live in Durham, and there would get one place to another. You quite often walk through the cathedral. I remember having to take a carpet from the castle to the riverbank on one occasion, and walking through the cathedral, and then deciding maybe that wasn't really appropriate. I heard funny stares, but there we are. Again, as usual, I digress. So, how important do you think the cemetery is for Tower Hamlets? As a little, sorry, let me just remind our viewers of the telephone number. If you've been to the cemetery and you've liked it, or if you've been to the cemetery and you didn't like it, give us a call, 020 8 123 4507. That's our number, I think. So do feel free to ring in and ask us a question, because we're going to move on slightly now to the cemetery park as one of Tower Hamlets' few green areas. I mean, they're good green areas, but not massive in number. Quite often we have Councillor Paul Merry on. I did invite him. He's a councillor in Redbridge, and he spends his life at the moment doing things like counting trees. And whereas I think Tower Hamlets, is it 4,000 trees we're supposed to plant in the lifetime of John Biggs now, or something like that?
Yes, I think they're a long way. I think they're almost there. They've done a lot of tree planting around the borough, and I think that's one of the what they do, and I know they have. And to be fair, I know they work hard at it, but I think so much of the news to do with the council is about them cutting trees down, and they don't. And I guess Tower Hamlets as a local authority is guilty of not always celebrating its successes, because obviously being connected to the Parks Department, we do hear about a lot of the tree planting projects that they do. So they have been working hard to reach that target. But I know people moan about the trees that get cut down by the tree team.
Well, the last time Councillor Merry and I discussed trees, where we were planting 4,000, they were planting 10,000 or something.
Yes,
they've got the space.
Different borough of Redbridge, isn't it? So,
yes, very much so. But I suppose poor council's been too busy over the last 6 months, I suppose, trying to sack its workforce. It probably hasn't had much time to cut trees down. That's at least they've had
a lot of wind damage to deal with the various high winds we've had at different points through the lockdown. They've had a bit of that to deal with.
You would have thought they would have held back from sacking their staff then, but
I don't know about that situation in terms of furloughing and sacking. No,
it's just something that I do say regularly here, because we've been inviting John Biggs onto the programme for about 3 months now, and he's not replied to our invitation. So I can only assume that he's been washing his hair every Tuesday night, and we're not going to hear from him. But that is not your concern, Ken. So that's
fair enough.
Elsewhere in our interest. Okay, so back to the question.
Yes.
Cemetery Park, it's a green area. How much does Tower Hamlets need its green lungs?
Well, it's very much so. I mean, it's immensely important to the well-being of the community of Tower Hamlets, and a growing community, because of the housing targets the borough has to meet. This has been recognised by Mayor Biggs. He recognises the importance of green space, and even before then, when Lutfer Rahman was in office, he even understood the importance of green space. And I think when they were doing their carbon targets for 2050, green spaces was part of that agenda. So the Tower Hamlets recognises it doesn't have enough green space for its current population, and it needs more, according to Natural England guidance. So, new developments, if they're kind of townscape size, they have to, as part of the local development framework, offer a hectare of new green space. So Tower Hamlets is trying. It doesn't want to lose any of its existing green spaces. It's preventing development of them. It's investing in the third sector, because they recognise the third sector have more capacity and ability to raise more resources for their parks, because it's not anything that they get central government funding for. It's done from a kind of moral and ethical standpoint, the funding of green spaces. So it's a really hard thing. It's a thing that's always continually cut, but everyone knows is important in all local authorities, the value of green space. And I think, for kind of filtering noise, filtering pollution, people's mental and physical well-being, parks have to be part of the thinking and reasoning behind the developments of cities and how they change and adapt to growing populations. Parks have to be in that conversation, and they have to be right top of the list, but they've got to be done well.
Yes, and I think I might want to take issue with you again over the question of the voluntary sector's ability to access funding, but I'm hearing that we have a call coming through.
Yeah.
Oh yes, there it is. Caller, if you can hear us, make sure your device is switched off or the sound is turned down. Hello, caller. What's your name?
Oh, hi. My name's Jackie.
Hello, Jackie.
Hi, Jackie.
Now, Jackie, you've got either your computer or your phone still on, haven't you? Because we have a 4-second delay in our broadcast. So we're hearing your voice, but also our own broadcast coming back at us. So can you make sure the sound is turned down on the loudspeaker on your phone? Oh, we're hearing you beautifully now. Jackie, what would you like to say to us?
Right, well, I'm just watching Ken, and I am one of the volunteers that goes over there. And I was working there for 2 years up until lockdown, and I hope to be going back soon. But I just want to say how absolutely beautiful the park is. It's absolutely stunning over there all year round. I mean, I've worked there through all the seasons, and it is the most absolutely beautiful place. Every time you go there, you see something different, and you think, my God, I've been here so many times, and I've never noticed that before. You know, I cannot praise the place enough. It is just natural beauty, and there's nowhere else like it. Well, not that I know of, certainly not in London at all.
What do you feel you get from going to volunteer there, apart from being able to see this beautiful place, Jackie?
Well, I mean, I've learned so much just going over there. I've never done, I mean, I'm nearly 66 and I've never done anything physical in my life. I'd never even pushed a wheelbarrow. And then I started going over there really just for something to do. And I learned so much from Ken and the staff. You know, there's only 2 members of staff there, but they're so knowledgeable, and just other volunteers as well, because all the volunteers seem to know a lot about their little interest. Maybe it'd be the birds or the insects or whatever. So it was like exercise, but which I'm not into at all. But of course, like going down to the gym, it was like doing this gardening and everything, and then just picking up all this bits of knowledge, you know.
It meant a lot to you.
I can say about it. It's just so magical over there. Like you go in the main entrance where the Stone Centre is, and it's like you just leave London behind. You enter this sort of place, and all you hear, you do get the trains going through because you've got the viaduct there, you know, as it goes over, and you get a lot of planes going over, which often interrupt the walks, you know, when they're doing the talking. But actually, that seems to be part of it. You don't get any traffic noise or anything. It's like you've gone on a day out to the countryside, you know.
That's wonderful.
You can't see any shops or anything. You can't, you know, you can see lots of flats around you, obviously, but it is just like having a day out in the countryside, but better.
Oh, well, there you are. What do you think of that, Ken?
That's brilliant. I thank you, Jackie. That's very kind of you to say. But I know Jackie quite well, and I know how fond she is of the cemetery park. So thank you for calling, Jackie, and saying that. I really appreciate it. It's wonderful. It's nice to hear you say it, because I haven't seen you for 6 months because you've not been able to come out. So it's lovely to hear your voice.
Yeah, right. And also the compost heap is huge.
Yes, it is.
Don't go on about the compost heap. I will have to go down there.
Come see it.
You quite understand how big that compost heap is. It's like a little mountain
Oh dear. Well, I shall have to come and have a look at it. Jackie, thank you so much for painting us that word picture. And
Thanks, Jackie.
Ken will see you soon.
Bye.
Yes. Cheers, Jackie. Bye.
Thanks for calling. Okay. Bye-bye now. That was lovely to hear. And if anyone else is listening and would like to call in and let us know what they think of the park, 0208 12345 07, something like that. Okay. But this area of peace and tranquility is, as I understand it, somewhat threatened now by redevelopment of the gasworks. I've seen, again, a press release came out about the campaign, and I should write that up shortly, but I haven't actually dug into it. So what's going on? Where is the gasworks? What gasworks?
So the gas, yes, you've got the old Bow Common Lane gasworks. So on the southern side of the cemetery park, the other side of the C2C line, you've got the old gasworks there that runs along Bow Common Lane. That was kind of decommissioned back in the early part of the millennium. And then I think in about 2007, maybe it was maybe a bit later. Anyway, it was earmarked for development, and things have gone on as they do. And towards the end of last year, a proposal was submitted. Now we were aware of something happening because St William's, the developers, had kind of been in touch with us to kind of get our thoughts on it, and we'd kind of shared with them our thoughts. Said, look, we're not opposing the development. People need homes. People need people to live. Tower Hamlets has got massive housing targets to meet. Our main concern will be shadowing and light pollution onto the cemetery park through height, and so that was fine. And then the kind of it was actually the council's biodiversity officer that told us they'd submitted the planning application, and so we kind of went online, had a look, and it was very different to what we hoped to see. And so with the help of a volunteer called Olivia, who's an architect, she helped myself and other members of the Friends kind of pull together our thoughts and develop our campaign to oppose elements of the development. So our main concern was the height and massing of the site. So there's like 14, originally there was 14 tower blocks ranging from kind of 40 odd meters to 80 odd meters, nearly 1,300 new homes and potentially 3,000 new residents. So, and a lot of that height was forced onto their northern side, the southern side of the cemetery park, which had a big impact on overshadowing of a very sunny side of the cemetery park, the most sunniest side of the cemetery park, where one of our most important wildflower meadows are, that is home to UK rare species of invertebrates, as well as nationally notable species. So we began kind of developing, saying what we wanted. We want it lowered, we want the massing redesigned, we want light pollution thought about, as well as kind of overshadowing. And thankfully, we've had a great response from the planning team, as well as politically within Tower Hamlets. And also St William's have been wonderful. They're a big housing organisation. They had no reason to sit in a room with us, but they did. And we've had a really positive working relationship with them. They've kind of listened and understood our concerns and done what they can to reflect those concerns and make those changes in the resubmission to the planning department. But obviously they've got their agenda. They are a development company, so they've got money to make. But I think that the changes we have made are good, but they're not perfect. So the current resubmission is in with the council. You've got till the 20th of September to air your concerns. If you visit our website, there is a campaign webpage with a link to a newsletter with all the information about what we've achieved and what we would like to see done further. So the main changes we'd like to see, to possibly have a scheme that we could even consider adopting. There are two central blocks in between the two tower blocks, and we'd like to have a block of uninterrupted shade. If they could be lowered to remove shade through either redesign and respreading or lowering, then we could have actually quite a nice scheme on our doorstep, because not only will we have a more considerate, sympathetic development scheme, some of the positives that will come towards the cemetery park will be quite good as well, especially in terms of mitigation. Could be quite nice as well. So but the first and foremost is the the mitigation's fine and wonderful and lovely if that happens, but we want a scheme that we can actually be happy to have, because we're going to have 12 years of development on our doorstep. You know, so we're going to, you know, if you've lived, I don't know how long you've lived on the Isle of Dogs, Jenny, but you know, anyone who's lived on there continuously since the 70s or 80s, that constant noise of piling and the digging up of roads and the restriction of access through the Isle of Dogs must be absolutely hair tearing at times. But you know, it's going to have a big impact on us, both visually and sound. And then there's all the new users, there's the light pollution, there's the loss of light and its impact on not just the wildlife of the site, but people's well-being. You know, a lot of people who use Cantrell Road, which is now a closed road on the southern side of the Cemetery Park, tell us it's the best part of their day to and from where they're going to enjoy the wildflowers and bask in the sun. And at various points in the day, that's going to be interrupted. And loss of sunlight is that is a human thing. People need access to sunlight. And it does need to be considered. But the developers, I can't knock them. St Williams have been really positive to work with, and I've enjoyed the process with them. But you know, they've got their lines in the sand, and we've got ours. So you know, I think there's still wiggle room, and I'd like to think we can get the next changes we'd like to see, and hopefully they'll be receptive to that.
Yes, I mean, you're right. I am sympathetic. I've lived on the island for 37 years.
Right.
So I have seen tremendous change, ghastly developers, and particularly the period 80. I came in 82 to whenever it was that the LDGC was finally shot. That was, you know, you look at the statistics and you think, oh, well, it's just a bit of development here, a bit of development here. It's not all happening in the same place. But it is, because traffic goes back and forth. And the dust, you know, you visit friends elsewhere or family elsewhere in the UK, and they just don't have as much dust as we had during that construction period. Yeah. And you don't know what the dust is either, because you know, you don't know what they're demolishing, and they don't know what they're demolishing. I mean, it's some sites have been better than others, but and you stop and you think, well, 15 years, that's a child's school lifetime. Yeah. So to go, you know, if your school life is accompanied by all this disruption going on, that's really quite an ask, you know, quite a sort of detriment. And you know, the compensation that you might get by way of a bit of funding for this, that, or the other. You know, there's a couple of community centres around here got new curtains. Was it worth it for that scale of development? And it's also somebody's sort of active retirement, really, you know, from the age of 60 or 65 to 70 or 80 or whatever. Yeah. So there's people who vast chunks of their lives have been. So I'm quite passionate about that, and I'm also quite passionate about the idea that I'm afraid the borough's full. The housing targets you spoke of were entirely self-inflicted, or almost entirely self-inflicted. And it's always possible to build something taller, but there comes a point where we are too full for people to move
the Tower
around.
Hamlets is very packed, and I mean, if you've only got to drive around the borough to feel that the infrastructure isn't there for the population, it can take you an absolute age to get to places if you have to drive, and that's your only means of transport. But it is what it is, being a city fringe borough with a finance district in it. You know, it's sadly the sad fact of life. But I do understand what you're saying.
Yeah, I think there's no need to inflict this level of development on Tower Hamlets, just because we've got the docks, or had the docks, and so we had some space left when they went. Well, we've filled all that up now. So
there's almost no water left at Canary Wharf when you go round it. They keep nibbling away at the wharfs, don't they? Keep trying to take it a bit more.
It's seriously going to get a lot worse. On my walks, I've been able to stand somewhere and think, what's that? That didn't used to look like that. And the vast space where they're building Wood Wharf, and there's another vast space, the West Ferry Print Works, that controversial deal. These are huge spaces, and since all this housing got put into Tower Hamlets, the waiting list hasn't really significantly, qualitatively changed.
No.
And the overcrowding list hasn't actually really significantly changed. So
No,
it's a bit
no.
sweeping, but it's the wrong kind of housing. It's not met housing need in this borough, and that's very wrong. But sorry,
Yep.
you got me on my hobby horse there.
No, I'm
right.
not. Don't disagree with you. So it's fine.
So wise. Right. You want to go on my list of people who've disagreed with me.
Yeah.
Good. Right. We're coming up to. I don't know how it happened, but we're coming up to the end of the programme, and we were going to talk about cars and air quality in greater depth. But dear listener, you will have
It's not
to,
something I can comment on a great deal. There is a really good air pollution officer in the council, and if you can get him to come on and have a chat with you, do. Honestly, he's brilliant. He really knows this stuff and says it in a really lovely way that allows you to understand what's going on. So I can always find his name if you can't find it and share it with you at some point, Jenny.
Yeah, we
get
can
him
certainly
on.
Yeah. That would be very nice, actually, because there's also a couple of other good officers hidden away in the council.
Yeah, no, he's really good. I've met him a couple of times, and he's really got his head screwed on about it and really understands what he's talking about.
The protocol is that the media are supposed to contact officers and councillors, but certainly officers, for appearances or interviews through the council communication department, the comms office, press department. And we were emailing them for a number of weeks, and without getting a reply. And then suddenly we got a reply when I think it was when I said, look, we're saying on air that you are not replying to us. So then we did get a reply saying, sorry, your emails have been lodged in our spam folder, in the council spam folder for a while, which was very odd, because in the middle of us emailing them about guests coming on, we'd also emailed them about something that was on their website, and they've managed to find that email and answer it. So that was all very odd. And now they've not replied to any of our emails. Certainly not since July.
So, they're a bit busy at the council. They've had a lot to deal with. So.
Yeah, I had to sack the workforce. Yeah. Okay, so look, Ken, in the last couple of minutes, what situation is the cemetery in now? Is it open for visitors? Are you still running courses? What is going on?
So we've been open throughout the lockdown for just daily visits, but we've restarted volunteering on every Tuesday and the first Sunday of every month. We're taking part in London Open House Weekend. At the moment, because we have to manage numbers, all the walks are currently sold out. They're free, but there's no more, but we may be able to release a few more spaces. It looks like we can stretch the numbers a bit. But yeah, we're looking to restart our third Sunday guided walks. So follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We've got a website, fothcp.org, and keep in touch with us there. Just type in Tower Hamlets Cemetery Park and you'll find all of our social media links and everything there. We're building up, we're building up all of our activities and gradually linking ourselves with people again, rather than just looking after space and keeping it clean, which is what we've been doing.
So we very much advise people. I mean, we are not sponsored by the Cemetery Park. This is a genuine independent media interview. All we can do is encourage people to pop down and have a look around for themselves and to find out what's going on. You can do it online, or you can actually, I'm sure, go down to the centre and find yourself or your co-workers or other volunteers. And
you'll find there's three of us that work there, so you can find myself, Susanna, or Michelle working there, and another chap called Dim who works for the other charity there. And there's four of us you can talk to if you've got any questions, usually during business hours, Monday to Friday, and some weekends.
Splendid. Okay, right. Well, usually at the end of the show, I go through the headlines across East London, but I think we might leave it there. There was I see on the Tower Hamlets website, there's an announcement that's putting a gateway across the road, which only the buses can get through, has reduced rush hour traffic in Wapping. So there we are. That's the start. Let's see what else Tower Hamlets can manage to do. I get the feeling, though, that most of the traffic goes straight through Tower Hamlets. Yeah. And it's actually the little people who just do a little bit of local travelling. There's a great community support network, I think, in Tower Hamlets.
Yes. Yeah.
Literally, I met somebody who has just found out that she's not going to be able to drive to work any longer. She lives in Tower Hamlets, works in Tower Hamlets. And why she's upset about that is she's perfectly able to get the bus, and she wouldn't mind as such. But literally after work, because she works sort of quite early, early morning 7ish or something, until early afternoon 2ish or something. and her routine is to go and do other people's shopping. It's not a COVID thing, but it's something that she's always done. And it's typical of Tower Hamlets, that sort of thing goes on. And now she won't be able to do it because she will no longer be able to drive to work because she can't park any longer. Her parking permit is now only for a very restricted mini zone.
Yes.
And so she's going to have to really put herself out to carry on with that community support. And that's all community support that Tower Hamlets doesn't have to pay for. And it's a shame that it's not being supported elsewhere. But anyway, I'm just rambling now as I talk about why it's the Tower Hamlets residents are perhaps being penalised for something that isn't totally their fault. We wait to see the results of. I understand that Councillor Andrew Woods, who was on here recently, talking about his petition to the council on parking. I think that petition is going quite well. Look it up and sign it if you haven't done it already, and maybe he'll let us know at some stage whether that's happening. I think the parking system's changing as from today. So I don't know what the campaign is. Okay, everybody, go down the Cemetery Park and also look up on its website what's happening with this development on the gas, old gas works, because that is potentially very worrying. Ken, it's been a dream.
It's been an absolute pleasure, Jenny. Really enjoyed myself. Thanks for inviting me. I had a lovely time.
We'll do it again. Okay.
Oh, please do. I'd love to come back.
Okay, we'll do that. We'll do that another time, quite soon.
Fantastic.
Thanks a lot, Ken, and thanks for watching. And we'll be back again next Tuesday. I'm not quite sure what we're doing next Tuesday, the 8th of September. So if you've got any wishes, let us know. And we're going to be back the week after with a focus on education once the children are back at school and things have settled down. We're going to be looking at the latest round of cuts in education, I hope. So thank you for watching today, and come back and watch us again another Tuesday at 10 o'clock. Thank you and good night.